Welcome back, guys. I'm so glad to have you here. And this is another great episode of The Amanda Show. If you're new here, my name is Amanda. And on this show, we discuss everything geopolitics from an African perspective. And usually we major on major stories that are coming out of Africa or maybe even around the world and how it relates to Africa. Hey, firstly, let me wish you guys an amazing holiday celebrations. Merry Christmas. I forgot to wish you a Merry Christmas in the last episode. I'm just recording this on the 28th of December. So this is a few days after Christmas. I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very, very, very Happy New Year. I'm so sorry I missed that. And then now let's get into the topics. So for today, things are really shifting around the world. And this trend has been visible for the past 2 years. First thing we will discuss is a very I think it's painful, a very painful story that just took place. So the leadership in Niger have just accused Nigeria of colluding with France to destabilize Niger. They are saying that Nigeria is playing a major role in harboring terrorists that are sabotaging infrastructure within Niger and even causing chaos. We will discuss that. Then from there, from Niger, we are going to move over to the United States. I want us to discuss the civil war going on within the MAGA camp because it is over the HB1 visas. If you know, the HB1 visas is a way that the US government gives a certain allocation. I think it's 85,000 a year, a certain allocation to companies to bring in skilled foreign workers. So Americans are having a serious issue with that. Even this is a MAGA civil war, but I want to discuss it in the context of Africa and how does this MAGA civil war affect us in Africa. And we'll round off with almost a breaking news. This one happened on Thursday. Yes, this one happened 2 days ago. That was when this happened. That there's been a prison break in Mozambique that released over 1,000. Some reports are saying 1,500 prisoners, hardened prisoners, have just been released into Mozambican society. But some others are saying it's as much as 6,000. But we are going to use the conservative figure of 1,500 prisoners, hardened criminals who have just been released into Mozambican society. I think that some people are trying to destabilize Mozambique because the last time I spoke about this, that was almost 2 months now. It was just after the elections in Mozambique when the protests broke out. In that video, I said that the protests in Mozambique are looking like a regime change operation funded by or backed up by the CIA. Well, things have just escalated because the protests seem to have calmed down, but they picked up again after the courts in Mozambique upheld the Frelimo party's victory. So people took back to the street. And when they took back to the street, we saw this prison break. I want to discuss that because I think that a lot of people are pushing to destabilize Mozambique. And this may not turn out well if we don't manage it properly. Thank you for joining me in this episode. You see, we have a lot of things to discuss. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Why I say you should like this video is because when you like this video, it tells the YouTube algorithm that Amanda is doing a very good job. And so it helps to make this channel grow. So please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with people around you so we can amplify African voices on the global scale. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description and also on the screen. And I want to especially thank those of you who have, because a couple of you have already supported my work on Buy Me a Coffee. I want to use this opportunity to thank you so much for believing in me and supporting me in this way so that I can continue doing what I'm doing. I'm really grateful. And if you want to support, the Buy Me a Coffee link is on the screen and is also in the description below. Now, let's begin. Sometime in this month of December, there was a terrorist sabotage of the oil pipeline that runs from Niger. It's like Niger Benin pipeline. There was a sabotage of that, and the government of Niger said they were going to investigate it. Well, finally, they investigated it and they concluded that it was a terrorist group that did that done, that got that done. But the worrying thing about that is the government of Niger accused Nigeria of playing a role in this terrorist activity we just saw in Niger. It wasn't. Now you may say, oh, maybe they are lying. The thing is, when it comes to international relations like this, I think there was even a time someone wrote a book that leaders and nations may lie to their citizens, but nations they don't lie to each other. Now, the after this happened, the foreign ministry of Niger summoned the Nigerian ambassador to Niger Republic and scolded them, even charged Nigeria with supporting terrorism in Niger. Of course, the Nigerian government denied it. But it didn't stop there. The leader of Niger, the military junta of Niger, now went on and made a public address of this matter to show you how serious it is. To show you how serious this thing is, the leader of Niger actually held a long conversation with different TV stations. So he did one in French, he did one in one of these local languages in Niger. I don't know the specific one, and he did one in Hausa. Now the Hausa language is spoken widely in Niger. It is also spoken widely in Nigeria because these people, the Hausa people, Hausa Fulani, they're actually the same people, but these silly European borders that drew across Africa is what separated them. So now we have some in Niger, we have some in Nigeria, but they're the same people. So he spoke this in the Hausa language. Three different interviews, three different languages, saying the same thing, accusing Nigeria of supporting terrorists and terrorism in Niger. Now, it wasn't just his accusation now is not just regarding the pipeline because now these people he may have done his investigation. So it's not just the pipeline sabotage that he's taking issues with. He's saying that Nigeria is even harboring terrorists within the country that are attacking. I think he even said Sokoto, the Sokoto state in Nigeria is harboring, like Nigeria is harboring these terrorists in Sokoto state. So these terrorists have been housed in Nigeria, but they're taking on their terrorist activities in Niger. Who is Nigeria doing this at the behest of France? Of France. You see, the last time I spoke about this Macron Tinubu friendship, I mentioned that just as Senegal and Chad were kicking out French military, Nigeria was bending the knee. Tinubu was bending the knee to Macron. You know, back then, when this thing happened, like when Tinubu went to, I think it was in November or early December, either November or early December, Tinubu went to France and they had all that pomp and flair for him, even had the armed forces, certain section of people, I think it was the armed forces, but I may be wrong, in France play Nigerian song. It was a band welcoming, so they were playing a popular Nigerian song as Tinubu was walking. It looked to me like they were just trying to woo Tinubu so that Tinubu would get things done for France. Remember, when France was kicked out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, especially Niger, I knew that they were not just going to pack their bags and go. They would go, but they would find several ways to come back. Even after they were kicked out of Mali, there was this intelligence official, part of the French intelligence agency. He said on national TV in France that, well, now that they do not have diplomatic relations with France, sorry, with Niger and their diplomats is out, now is the best time to conduct destabilizing activities in Niger. He said it on national TV. He said it on national TV. Some months ago, I saw on national TV, France 24 to be precise, I saw that these anchors on France 24 invited the rebel leader, whom a lot of Malians would say a terrorist, but they invited him on France 24 and they were having discussions with him on France 24. And this guy, this rebel leader slash terrorist, depending on which side you're on, this guy was saying that they were going to keep doing things in Mali and they were going to ensure that things go their way, certain way in Mali. And this is me just trying to pick my words carefully. So why this is really so sad for me is Nigeria, you have your experience with terrorism. You know what terrorists can do to a country. How many Nigerians have died as a result of terrorist activities that we usually say is funded by outsiders? We usually say it's funded by outsiders. And I mean people outside of Africa. These terrorist activities, in Nigeria did not just kill Nigerians, which is absolutely terrible. It also hindered growth, economic growth, because when, for example, now farmers, part of the terrorist activities we see in Nigeria is that bandits take over farms and they take over a large region, right? And so the farmers in that region is either they pay tax to the bandits to sell their goods, or if they don't pay tax, the bandits terrorize them. That has led to the reduction of food in Nigeria, because this is happening in the northern part of Nigeria. And the northern part of Nigeria is really into farming. So they supply most of the food that we eat in the country, they supply it. So this has affected food in Nigeria. These terrorist activities also, they are, I don't listen, they are so smart that they attack mines, gemstone mines, minerals, natural resources. They take time with gold mines. They go to this place and they terrorize. So that money that would have come from Nigeria selling, say Nigerians selling its sapphires, or Nigerians selling its gold, or Nigerians and their lithium or something, that money has been, that economic prospect has been put on hold. So Nigeria has its experience. No, Nigeria knows what terrorism can do to a country. That's why I find it very difficult to swallow this pill that the Nigerian government, Tinubu's administration, will support France. This is as accused by Niger Republic. Will support France in destabilizing a brotherly state like Niger. Yes, I know France is really taking this goal with Niger, because remember that after breaking up diplomatic ties and all of that, France also, the France was ripping Niger off with their, I think it was it's uranium. So uranium, I think uranium that goes for, I believe, some a couple of hundreds of dollars. Yes, France was getting it for, is it 11 cents, something like that. So that's cute deal. One of the reasons why Niger couldn't even get its money's worth for its own resources in its country, was what France was. France new colonial activities in Niger kept the country poor. Example of this uranium. So when this military junta came into power in 2023, after they dealt with the whole political thing, they dealt with the French company that was exploiting and impoverishing Nigerians with this their uranium deal. So even this year, I saw a couple of times where that French company, is it Orion? I can't, let me not say the particular name because I don't remember. But they reported losses several times this year because they did not have access to that kind of exploitative deal. It wasn't even a deal, that exploitative neo-colonial activity in Niger. They didn't have that access anymore. So the country was reporting loss. So definitely Macron has an incentive to keep that wicked, yes, it's really wicked, to keep that wicked deal and that wicked economic policy going, because it was benefiting France and French companies. But it wasn't benefiting the Nigerians. It wasn't benefiting the government of Niger and even the country itself. It wasn't benefiting them. So it was in Niger's interest to kick out France and to stop that kind of exploitative neo-colonial policy, economic policy. That was why it happened. But no, Tinubu decided to be a happy, puppet is too nice a word. Puppet is too nice a word. But I'm going to use it because the word that really captures what is going on now, I don't want to use that word. So Tinubu decided to be a happy puppet to pursue the interest of France in West Africa. Like I said initially, this story is really painful. For me, I find it very painful that I want to, it's the implication of this is so big and it's so disastrous that I want to believe Tinubu's government. I want to believe Tinubu and his administration, and I want to believe them by and say that there is no evidence. This is just baseless and unfounded accusations against the Nigerian state by Niger. Because if this is true, oh my God, oh my God, this is the worst thing that has ever happened. That like this is the worst Nigerian's foreign policy ever since 1960. 1960, when the Nigerians said we want to take care of our political governance. We want to govern ourselves. This is the worst. Because tell me, how does funding and backing up terrorists in Niger, how does it benefit Nigeria? Let's look at it. Because at the end of the day, politics and geopolitics should always be taken from a standpoint of national interests. Because like I mentioned a few minutes ago or a few moments ago, whatever France is doing, right, whatever France wants to get done in Niger, they can argue that, okay, ever since this French company lost the uranium mines, they've lost a lot of money. So French companies are getting kicked out of the global show because they don't have access to that exploitative, wicked, neo-colonial economic policy in Niger. So you may look, even if I don't agree with it, you may look at France, okay, from that standpoint and say, all right, this is how it's so-called benefits France. But how does it benefit Nigeria? Because if Nigeria chooses to work with France to do something in Niger, it should be, we should clearly see how Nigeria gets to benefit from this. How? Nigeria is harboring terrorists in its country who are taking out, doing their activities in Niger. Okay, what happens when Niger finally gets this under control? The terrorists will face inside Nigeria because terrorists will have to do terrorist things. They cannot not be terrorists. Terrorists will have to do terrorist things. So when Niger gets this security issue in their country under control, where would these terrorists that Nigeria, Tinubu is harboring in Sokoto, where would they face? They will face Sokoto inside Nigeria. So how does that benefit Nigeria? I don't see it. So another way we look at it, how does it benefit Nigeria? Nigeria sets Niger on fire, and Niger burns, and the fire burns into Nigeria. Because, like I said before, when Tinubu was threatening to invade Niger, the reason Tinubu did not invade Niger was not because Tinubu did not have the will. He had the will, he wanted to do it. It was because he did not have the political capital. Because, number one, his election is very questionable. His election, he's sitting down in Aso Rock, is very questionable. He has legitimacy issues in Nigeria. A huge chunk of Nigerians say he rigged the elections, he did not win clear. That is number one. Number two, the economic situation in Nigeria is nonsense. Tinubu has overseen in this is just the second year. By May 2025, we'll make it fully 2 years, then we'll begin to enter the third year. So this is just the second year of Tinubu. We are just in the second year of Tinubu's administration. He came in May 2023. This is December 2024. In between May 2023 and December 2024, Tinubu has halved Nigeria's GDP. Nigeria's GDP was 400 and something billion, which I think was even bad because Nigeria, with a population of 200 and something million people, is not supposed to have that GDP. But that is talk for another day. We have Buhari to thank for that. But that is talk for another day. Anyway, Tinubu took that from 400 and to just a little bit over 200 billion. Never had in 40 years, never in most Nigerians, because yeah, the most population of Nigerians are young people. So most Nigerians in Nigeria today have never seen such a bad economy. They never knew something like this was possible. Something you were buying for 50 naira before is now 300 naira. This is maximum inflation. And people's salaries living wage has not gone up. Fuel, petrol that Nigeria was buying for 165 naira, as we speak, is 1,060 naira. Before you have filled your tank with, say, 15,000. Now, depending on the car, now you're filling your tank with 63,000 naira. I need you to understand what Tinubu has done to Nigeria's economy. He has destroyed it. He has destroyed it. And if something is not done, Nigerians, if something is not done, this is just the beginning of what Tinubu can do. But that is talk for another day. So you see the economic situation in Nigeria. Very terrible. So Tinubu did, that's why I said he didn't have political capital to go and invade Niger because the situation in the country was bad. He was going to have an uprising because, when people are dissatisfied, any little thing can trigger a fire. So you see the way he was dancing and shaking when Nigerians were protesting high cost of living in August and they were flying the Russian flags. He lost his mind. Children, he he was taking them to court for what was the word? For treason. Children that were protesting that they were hungry. When they went to court, when they arraigned them in court, oh my God, the country lost it. That way, after that he had to drop charges. Children, children, some of them 10, some of them 15 children who were protesting that they were hungry. Tinubu arrested them and was charging them with treason that had the death penalty. It was when they were taken to court and Nigerians saw that they were even emancipated, they were hungry. Some of them even fainted in the courts. That was when he dropped charges. So that kind of panic is the kind of panic that you see from someone who knows that he has legitimacy issues. That was why Tinubu did not invade Niger. Oh, he had the will. He wanted to do it. Don't kid yourself, he wanted to do it. There was even a time he wanted to do it, these guys, like hidden. But people within the military leaked information to some journalists in Nigeria. And other Nigerians knew what Tinubu was planning. So I'm drawing this back to how does this benefit Nigeria? It doesn't benefit Nigeria in any way. Except Tinubu has been paid by France. So now he's just working to execute France's foreign policy in Niger to the detriment of Nigeria. Let's say you don't care about Niger, Mr. Tinubu, but this is to the detriment of Nigeria. I just mentioned certain times when I was discussing this topic, different occasions where TV stations, prominent TV stations in in France, have harbored people who were threatening stability in West African countries, Mali and Niger. The one in Niger was a, a French intelligence agent who said that, well, now that we do not have diplomatic relations, we might as well do destabilizing efforts in Niger. The second one was the rebel/terrorist of Mali threatening the Malian government on France 24. These people are not your friends. These people are not your friends. See that time where we say maybe France or the United States or some country is funding terrorists in Africa, and it seemed like conspiracy theory. Well, now many of us, because back then I was even thinking, then when I was not really politically savvy, I was thinking this is just a far-fetched thing. It's just Nigerian government not being serious enough to tackle terrorism and all of that. But now, the more I follow geopolitics, the more I see evidence that points to the fact that actually all these terrorist activities are funded by outsiders. Because the more you can destabilize a country, the less likely they are able to gather themselves to effect, to pursue policies for national sovereignty, economic sovereignty, military sovereignty. Because military sovereignty is one of the most important things a country needs, especially in today's world. But you can't have it when you're having pinch prick terrorism acts all over the place. Then they will now come and say, okay, let us put military base in your country, or let us train your military so that we can bring peace. All the military they have been helping us train in Africa. Which African country that has been so bad, that has really been working with these so-called trainers, which African country has peace as a result of those trainings? None. None. There is none. None. All these France, let's work with France here. Let's work France will say, let us put military base here. Let us do this. Look at everywhere they have French military. Everywhere there's French military presence or French military training activities. Everywhere. There are terrorist activities there. There is not one place that has peace. Show me evidence. Show me the one that has peace. Work after working with French military. None. So I want to believe Tinubu's government. Like I said, I want to believe them just because the thoughts of this accusation from Niger being true. Ah, oh, this is the worst Nigeria has fallen since 1960. In fact, I dare say, okay, let's say since 1960, because the concept of Nigeria is a European construct, right? So, since the concept of Nigeria began, and we can take that to 1914 with the amalgamation of the northern and the southern states. The concept of Nigeria, since it began, this is the worst Nigeria has ever fallen. The worst. Nothing comes close. Not even Obasanjo's expedition in Liberia with Charles Taylor. Not that. This is the worst, the most diminishing, the most embarrassing, the most. It seems like Tinubu just came into office to mock Nigeria. He just said, I want to make a public embarrassing spectacle of Nigeria because it's been one embarrassment after another. Just after the foreign ministry of Niger called in the Nigerian ambassador and made these charges to Nigeria as well, both the government and the people, they made this charge to Nigeria. The Alliance of Sahel States, they increased their military alertness on high. They even told their citizens to be watchful against terrorist activity. So right now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, their armed forces are on high alert. Do you know what that means? They're expecting a war. That's what it means. They are saying if we are ready if a war breaks out. So I need you to understand because we now in this country now in Nigeria, particularly the people, not just in Nigeria, but even maybe the people around West Africa, I don't think people have really come to a grasp of what this thing is. No, these guys in the Sahel states, the alliance of the Sahel states, are saying we are ready for war. Their armed forces is on high alert. If anything happens, they are ready to be deployed. So this charge they just made against Nigeria, they made it against Nigeria. And I think this morning, I haven't really read the full story, but this morning I think they also said something about Benin Republic. Yes, they also said something about Benin Republic. So anyway, to them, the guys in AES, the countries of AES, they are in their mind. They are as good as at war with ECOWAS. Nigeria leading the charge. They are as good as at war with Nigeria and ECOWAS. To them, I want Nigerians to understand what is going on. That at the behest of France, because when you say outsiders, it's like when I say outsiders, it's like it's like a dream. We can't really put a figure on it. But I need to call the country so you know. At the behest of France, in no interest to Nigeria whatsoever, Nigeria is willing Tinubu is willing to take Nigeria to the path of war because of France. Like I asked before, how much did Macron pay Tinubu? How much? How much? But there's no interest. Even, yes, let me even say this thing now. Sometime in April, there were rumors that were flying around that France had set up a military base in Nigeria. The Nigerian government denied it. And I believed them. There was even this very controversial political analyst. He's Nigerian, or he's a northern Nigerian. So he's very controversial, particularly in the north. In the north, he's very controversial. But then he made that serious. He said that there's French military right now in Nigeria. There's a French military presence, even military base. He said military base in Nigeria. This was happening around March, April of 2024. When this leader, the military leader in Niger, had these interviews, I told you that he did it in French, he did it in other native language of Niger, and then he did it in Hausa. When he had these interviews, he said, point and clear, he said that we have French military base in Nigeria. But right now it's hush hush. And he said it was in March this thing was set up. So Nigerians know that era of Nigeria claiming sovereignty because we didn't have any military base in the country. Know that that era is gone. Tinubu has ensured that Nigeria, that wasn't really sovereign though, but Nigeria could posture as a sovereign nation. Tinubu has just ensured that that luxury of sovereignty that we had, that dream sovereignty we had in our mind, Tinubu has ensured that it is erased. If these accusations are true, that we have French military presence in Nigeria. Before I round up this segment, I want to say something. I've said this several times on this show. that colonialism never ended. That thing we did in the 1950s, 1960s, and said that Africa gained independence, we never gained independence. Colonialism, exploitation, even political capture, political state capture, economic capture, everything, it did not end. We have been living in la la land, and this past 3 years now has just awakened us to the fact that yes, we were living in la la land. All the while, before 2020, all the while, France had an empire in Africa. Before 2020, nobody knew. It was a secret empire. Yes, when they in the 1950s and the 1960s were leaving African countries and saying, okay, well, colonialism is over, blah, blah, blah. When they did all of that, it was just for show. It didn't end. But tell me how you are sovereign when you're still using a currency printed by France. But that is by the way. So it was that military takeover. I think it started in 2020. When that began, is when we started being awakened. We started realizing something is going on here. The Niger experience in 2023 with the military taking over is what now people like me made me say, okay, France, the French Empire has always been on. It did not end. I said that to say this. It is now that African nations are, back then, yes, we did fight for independence though. They gave us a show that we got it. But it is now we are actually fighting for sovereignty, complete and absolute sovereignty. And it's beginning with these three countries of the Sahel, Alliance of Sahel States. It's beginning with them. Now, I want Africans to realize that as we gradually take back our continent, our respective countries, maybe one step at a time, 1 inch at a time, we push these invaders back bit by bit. As we do this, don't think that they are going to go. Don't dream of it. Don't be disillusioned. France is not going anywhere. Even if you kick France out of all those so-called French-speaking African states, France is going to stay at the corner and is going to keep conniving and thinking how to come back. Because stripping them of this empire in Africa is going to make them awakened to the way things are globally. Now, what do I mean by that? Outside of Africa, right? France is not really a sovereign nation. Like outside of Africa, France is not really, I don't want to, it's not really as big of a deal. Today's France is not really as big of a deal as in France several decades ago. So this empire in Africa is what makes them relish the greatness of the French Empire and still makes them feel like we're still a big deal. So taking away this African empire from them is going to awaken them to the fact that really the emperor has no clothes. I said it before, I'm saying it again. France is not even a sovereign nation. See that thing they are doing in the EU. The EU is not a European thing. It's an American creation to subjugate the countries of Europe. That's what the EU is. Let me tell you, in case you don't know. So that's what sometimes I hear so Africans say, oh, see how they did the EU, we need to copy and do the AU. No, if you are doing the AU, well, if you are doing the AU, if you want to mirror it like the EU, we'll be making a colossal mistake because the EU is an American creation. This illusion that is European sovereignty there's no such thing as European sovereignty. It is French sovereignty, German sovereignty, United Kingdom sovereignty, Hungary's sovereignty. Do you understand? Italian sovereignty. There is no such thing as European sovereignty. Why? That's one of the reasons why Ursula von der Leyen, after Russia marched into Ukraine, see in the future we're going to keep drawing back to say when Russia marched into Ukraine was the beginning of the break, this geopolitical break we are seeing globally. We'll make reference to that. Anyway, Ursula von der Leyen, when she wanted to punish the Russians, she said I should close the airspace. I don't know who gave her that authority. Let's be honest, who gave her authority to do that? But she closed the airspace to Russian flights and said Russian flights are banned from using European airspace. I took an issue with that because there's no such thing as European airspace. Europe is not a country. There's no such thing as European airspace. It is French airspace, British United Kingdom airspace, Germany's airspace, Italy's airspace, Slovakia's airspace, Poland's airspace. These are independent countries. But when they pack all of them together and tie them under the umbrella of the EU, because they do not, those countries you're seeing there, they do not have sovereignty. United States used the EU to completely subjugate Europe's economy. Then Europe's political, although they say it's not a political bloc, but it's really beginning because how can Ursula von der Leyen make such political demand and close Russian flights, close the European airspace against Russian flights? That's a political decision. But they said EU is just economy. Do you understand? So the United States used the EU to subjugate Europe's economy, the individual countries, their economy and their politics. Then used NATO to subjugate them militarily. So that idea, that thing that you are seeing there in Europe, EU, is an illusion, it's not real. So those countries within, why do you think they are fighting Victor Orban? Why do you think they're fighting? Because the EU does not exist. It does not tolerate the sovereignty of individual nations. It doesn't tolerate it. It's focused on this globalization, this globalist ideology. So it doesn't have tolerance for national government, like nationalist states. And that's why they have a problem with Hungary and Viktor Orban's Hungary. They would rather remove him and put someone who's going to play puppet and continue that American supremacy over Europe. And this whole globalist ideology and agenda. People like Macron of France, they are born of these globalist institutions. So is it not one of these Rothschild bankers? They are born out of these globalist institutions, right? So France in itself understands, when your sovereignty is gutted, especially a country like France that has centuries of being like the top of the world, right? So being the top of the world and now being on your knees with this EU, NATO something is quite good. If you as a proud French person should take a closer look at it, it is humiliating, right? So they use these empires in Africa to still try to feel they're still the top of the world when they remember, okay, we still control these people, right? So they still feel like they're on the top of the world. That is why the removal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from this French influence, France cannot swallow that pill. And the more of these African countries we truly liberate and insist on like the sovereignty of African nations, right? And the more of this we truly liberate and insist on, the more gut wrenching is going to be for France. So don't think all this long talk I'm talking is for you to don't think that when you tell France to go, they'll say okay and they go. They're not going anywhere. I can bet you now that if you go to Paris, in Paris, maybe in the Palace or somewhere, I don't know where they have their meetings, but if you go to Paris and you hear the conversations that they say, you'll be surprised how many times reference is made to Africa. And I mean within their political institutions and their economic institutions, because a lot of France's economic strength comes from the subjugation of Africa. It comes from these neo-colonial exploitative economic policies in many African countries. And they need leaders such as Tinubu, such as Bazoum, they removed from Niger. Leaders like this who are going to maintain the status quo just as long as it benefits them personally. So don't deceive yourself. Don't be disillusioned. Don't live in la la land to think, well, we told France to go and they went. They're not going anywhere. France is not going to go anywhere. I told you they're looking to set up military base in Madagascar. France is not going anywhere. So the same way they are consistently discussing Africa in Paris, they may tell you that Africa is not important because they need you to keep feeling inferior. They need you to keep feeling inferior so that they can continue the things they have been doing for 500 years. Do you get me? So if you're listening to them in Paris, they're discussing Africa. So Africans, we need to keep discussing us. So don't say, well, we have the victory in Niger, we have the victory in Mali, we have the victory in Burkina Faso, and the way we got the victory in these three countries, we are going to get the victory like that in other African countries, and France is just going to be happily live, live, live. No, France is not going to happily live. France is going to double down. It's going to keep thinking of strategy to come back to Africa, to exploit Africa, to keep Africa on its knees, so that it can continue this robbery of the and rape and pillaging of the African continent. But as France is doing that, we too we need to think on our feet. Maybe somebody somewhere is listening to me. You have access to someone within government. Maybe it's somebody you know that somebody you know. It may be a long chain, but please spread this word out. We need to think on our feet. How God help me. The things I want to do. The things I want to do. One of the things in my mind, but we need heavy we need heavy funds to get this done. One of the things I want to do, I want to set up a think tank that will focus on Africa's political style. Hey God. We will start with just a handful of countries because if we want to do it across all 5 African countries, it's going to cost a lot. So we're going to start with a handful of African countries. But we need to fund things like this in Africa. Maybe you that you're listening to me, maybe you're somewhere in South Africa, you have access to resources. Gather your countrymen, or maybe your friends, maybe your countrymen is too much. Gather your friends, particularly black South Africans. Gather your friends who also have access to finances, resources. You people should sit down together and create a think tank that will produce economic strategy for South Africa to benefit South Africans. Do you hear me? It is existential that we do this thing. If you're someone with resources in say Ghana, gather your countrymen or your friends together, pool money together, set up a think tank that will discuss, that will research, that will create economic policies for Ghana. You may say, well, it's one thing to create a policy, it's another thing for the government to enforce it. Relax. That is one of the reasons I told you that the main thing, and I've gone really far in this, the main thing that we are going to focus on beginning of next year is our African media movements. We will create that thing anywhere you are in Africa. Oh, don't worry, I'm launching it. By God's grace, I'll launch it by January. By January is when I'll launch this thing. Right. So that's why we're creating it. Because by the time we control to a certain degree our media landscape, and we have such a thing from say come out from Ghana, some Ghanaians have come together, they've created a think tank that has thought up sound economic policies for Ghana that focuses on Ghana. We don't care about anybody. If they can say America first in the United States, why can't you say Ghana first in Ghana? Are there the only people that can say first? Why can't we say Ghana first in Ghana? If they can say America first in the United States, why can't we say Nigeria first? Why is it that everybody can say America first? We hear them in Britain to say we're going to take care of Britain. We hear them in lots of European countries and they say we're going to focus on our citizens. But it's Africa's own resources, it's Africa's own talents, it's Africa's own people, it's Africa's own bodies that need to serve the dreams of other people. The day we decide, okay, let us just focus on Africa, we have become bad. They'll call you socialist. They will call you socialist. They will say you are breaking your free market capitalism, World Trade Organization bullshit. They will have an issue with you. They will even bomb your country. They will overthrow your leaders. They will assassinate your leaders. Africa will have a history rich with this kind of thing. So as if it's bad for us to want to use our people and our resources to benefit our respective countries and the well-being of our people. But then it's okay for them to do it for themselves. They have refineries working, producing oil that they do not have. They have it working, but the day we say let us set up a refinery, they'll be fighting Dangote refinery. As if Africans should not have economic sovereignty. Anyway, that is the old way. I'm telling you the new way is going to work now. Listen to me. If you're in Egypt, if you're in Morocco, you have access to resources. You have access to money. What I mean by resources, I mean money. Go and set up a think tank. Gather your friends. If you need, say you need $1 million to make $1 million. Okay, let's use $100,000. Say you need $100,000 to get this thing done. You have 50,000. Go and reach your 5 of your friends. They should bring 10,000. When they bring the $10,000 together, you set up a think tank in Morocco that will focus on Morocco's economic policy. When we do this all across Africa, we Africans are working together in unison. We are working with the same agenda. When we do this thing across Africa, when say now we have this is the policy that we want to from our say let's use our Ghanaian think tank. This is the economic policy we want in Ghana. We submit it to the government, and the government says no. We will use our media arm to put pressure on the government. That is why one of the reasons why we are creating. You see why this media thing is important. We will use the media thing that we are creating. We put pressure on the government. By the time we put pressure on them, they will implement it. Do you see where? Do you see how this? Why I keep saying the most important thing we can set up now is media. Do you get me? So let us come together to do this thing for Africa because nobody is coming to help us. France is not going anywhere. But the more they are thinking in Paris, we need to think more in Africa. We need to think more in Africa. Our leaders, even if let's look at these leaders who are really fighting for independence of their countries in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they may not have access to money because all of them are, many of them are owning the IMF and the World Bank. So they may not have access to money. But individuals may have access to money that the government does not have. It is so where the government has failed, right? We the people should step in to fill that gap. We are working for the interest of our countries. Do you understand? So don't say, well, it's up to the government to do think tank or it's up to the government to do. No, many of our governments are broke. The countries are rich. Africa is rich, but many of the governments are broke because they have tied themselves so stupidly to the IMF and the World Bank. So where the government is unable to meet, whatever they are unable to meet, we the citizens should step up. We the people should step up and close that gap. At the end of the day, in the long run, it will work for the benefit of our respective countries. Do you understand? So once we can get these things done, removing puppets who are working to the disadvantage of their countries and the continent and even their neighbors, puppets like Tinubu, removing them is not going to be an issue. But let us gather ourselves together first. Do you get me? Because France is not going anywhere. Don't deceive yourself. France is not going anywhere. If they finally accept to be completely gone, they will wake up to the fact that even on an international stage, they're not a big deal anymore. And that is a very tough pill to swallow. Very tough pill to swallow. So let me know what you think about the accusation of the government of Mali, sorry, of the government of Niger against Nigeria. Oh, so sad. So sad. That Nigeria is harboring terrorists and backing terrorists that are causing commotion and disasters all across Niger. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. Please like this video. Liking this video tells YouTube that you appreciate the work that I'm doing here. And YouTube will then push this video to reach more people whom they will think would also find this video helpful. So please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone that you know, everyone around you, so we can let our people across Africa, and even Africans in diaspora, let them know what is going on in the continent. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, I just told you about this project, this media project that I'm launching in 2025. I want to do it by January. I've also told you many other things that we can do. So if you want to support the work that I'm doing on this channel and on this show, please, you can use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description and also on the screen. Thank you so much for your support. It seems like this is going to be a very long episode. I didn't plan it, but there are a lot of things that I want to discuss. So now for the second discussion for today. Something is going on in Maga land. There seems to be a civil war in Maga Republic. If you well, you should know since you follow politics. But if you don't know, MAGA is Donald Trump's section. It's like the conservative party. But now that Donald Trump is president, it's like Donald Trump's ideology, Donald Trump's section of the Republican Party, the Make America Great Again movement. Now, something happened that I want to discuss and tie it to Africa, why it should also be our business. A few days ago, Donald Trump announced that one Indian is going to be like in charge of AI, advise Donald Trump on AI. Now, Trump already has this guy, former CEO of, what's that his name? The former CEO of PayPal. I think it's David Sachs. Yes, David Sachs. Already has David Sachs heading the AI and Bitcoin something. right? Advising Trump on that. So Trump also mentioned that this guy, this Indian guy, I've forgotten his name. So this Indian guy is going to work with David Sachs. And when he mentioned it, Laura Luma, she's a political personality, she's a political commentator in the United States, but she's on Trump's side. So Laura Luma took issues with it because this guy doesn't, I think he celebrated this American H1B. Is it H1B or I think it's H1B. I'll find it on the I'll find it and put it on the screen. So he celebrated that H1B visa where it's a situation where America allocates 85,000 slots that American companies can use it to bring high skilled workers into the United States. So Laura Luma took a swipe at the guy because a lot of Americans they say no to immigration. America first for them is America first. No immigration, no immigrants, don't bring anybody. But some a section which is actually the business guys of the Republican of the MAGA crowd, people like Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, even this David Sachs, these guys are open to the H1B visas because it helps them in their companies. Now, the rest of the MAGA, they're saying no immigration, no good immigration, no bad immigration, no legal immigration, no illegal, don't bring anybody, get out. So this has caused the faction in the party. In fact, something that even made me laugh is that Elon Musk is always tweeting that there's nothing like racism in the United States. Oh, black people are complaining of racism. Nothing like racism in the United States, blah, blah, blah. But when this fallout happened, he He called the MAGA crowd that is against these H1B visas, he called them racists. Right there in black and white on Twitter. I'll see if I can find that thing and I'll put it on the screen. He called them racists. So this idea, right, that sometimes sometimes when you follow politics and you look at politics in different countries, it's easy for you to be drawn into a certain crowd because they're making a compelling argument, right? But you need to understand that people twist narrative. It doesn't matter who. I know Elon Musk said that he bought Twitter so that free speech can happen, blah, 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 whatever. But people will twist the narrative to suit themselves. This is the Elon Musk that always says racism does not exist, racism, blah, 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 blah. He just called MAGA folks racist and he said they were going to remove them from the Republican Party. Vivek Ramaswamy too, when he tweeted his support of the H1B visas, he actually said the reasons why because they say the reason why these American companies, these tech boys and these big corporations like the H1B visas is because it brings in migrants who are so dependent on the company. Because if they leave the company, they go back to their countries. So it brings in the migrants who are so dependent on the company, and then the company can pay them less than they will pay Americans, right? So they are saying is their support. So this MAGA, should I say, the most of the MAGA, this Elon Musk faction that is supporting the H1B visas, they're very small. So the most of the MAGA people are saying the reason why they are supporting it is because it will bring migrants these companies can pay less, and because they pay them less, they can make more money and not employ Americans. So they are saying, don't bring anybody at all. There's no such thing as skilled migrants. Use Americans that are here and pay them what you're supposed to pay them. Now Vivek took an issue with that and said that I'm paraphrasing his tweets. I'm paraphrasing his tweets. He now said that his note is going to take a flank for what he is about to say, but he's going to say that the reason that they have more skilled workers in certain areas out from outside, or this thing turned out to now be like India versus US. So the reason why they have more skilled workers from outside is because of America's culture. America's culture celebrates mediocrity. For those skilled immigrants that are coming from outside of the United States, that they're hardworking and they do the best. So America should stop watching all this 90. Called a lot of 90s soap opera, even the small lifestyle, that they should work very hard. Blah blah blah. Then the Americans went mad in the streets and called him a Hindu nationalist. And called him a Hindu nationalist. Right? So this thing is the main fight. Now, like I said, although this H1B visa is for everybody, but they now turned out because the thing that triggered it was Laura Luma's issue with this Indian that Donald Trump just brought into his administration. So that was what. So it now turned out to be an American-based Indian thing. So they spent time insulting Indians, say that Indians they don't have toilets in their don't have toilet papers and toilets in their country. They say they are skilled immigrants. Blah blah blah. Then they now ask them that the Indians will now answer them and say, who is the CEO of Google? Is he not an Indian? The CEO of Microsoft, is he not an Indian? The CEO of this, CEO of that, CEO of blah, blah, blah. Are they not Indians to show that they are more skilled than Americans? Americans will now say, well, your CEO, did you start the company? It's been crazy. But I'm bringing this to our attention because it's not just Indians that use the H1B visas, right? That's what I'm talking about because I know several Nigerians have used it to relocate. And even the person who the person who I know personally, who went to Microsoft with that visa. So, and Nigerians also use that visa. So, and remember that Nigeria, there was a report, and I heard this report from Tucker Carlson. There was a report that Nigerians are one of the most successful ethnic groups in United States. They even earn more than white Americans on average. But Tucker Carlson was citing that to show you that, well, to say that white supremacy does not exist, blah, blah, blah. That was why he was citing. So I thought it was a very interesting thing. And even Nigerians in the United States, since we're talking about USA, are one of the most educated groups, ethnic groups, like in the United States. So I'm bringing this up now is for you to understand the way the world is changing. You see that era where your country may be going a certain way in Africa and you think it's not going in the right direction, and you just say, well, fuck it, I'm going to leave this country. And you leave to set up a rewarding life in the United States or Great Britain or sorry, the UK, or maybe even in France, somewhere in the West. That era is quickly coming to a close. If you watch the way the politics has been moving in the West, and if you also watch the leading media voices in the West, it is leaning right, right, right. One of the reasons why Donald Trump won this election is because the Conservative Party in the United States have so masterfully, and I'll give them credit where credit is due, they have so masterfully created a powerful media force. Traditionally, media is a left thing. That's why if you look at the mainstream media, they always talk in favor of the Democrats, right? And then the mean Trump and the MAGA movement, but their primary focus is Democrats. But if you look at the alternative media in the United States, it's not just it's MAGA, it's a MAGA thing. So that was one of the, and then Elon Musk now bought Twitter and turned Twitter right. So that's one of the things that helped Trump secure a second term. Now I said that to say this. As the politics is moving right, see Donald Trump. Now Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump is not really a right person because he doesn't have issue with abortion. He doesn't even have issues with homosexual and like normal conservative, they have issues with abortion, they have issues with immigration, they have issues with homosexuals and that. But Trump is not quite like that. Do you get? But if we look at the way the politics have been moving, even let's look at Europe. We saw Italy moved to Giorgia Meloni and a hard right party. We are seeing in the UK now, you may say, well, the Labour Party, the left is just in the UK. But you forget that Nigel Farage's party, his party, Reform UK, is a right-leaning party. And it's more like populist rights. UK is a right-leaning party. He just announced yesterday or day before yesterday that his party, that is Reform UK, is now the number 2 biggest political party in the United Kingdom. When did he start this political party? He just started it. They now have more registered, like more members, and the Conservative Party, which is probably the oldest party in the United Kingdom. But remember, he's right. Even though not, Musk has even said something supporting him. Let's look at Germany. Even right now, Germany gets displaying back and forth, no problem. But look at the party that is rising, the AfD, the AFD. The AFD is right. Look at Hungary. Hungary is right. Look at Poland. Poland is right. Look at France. Macron has gone up and down trying to turn everything over its head against Le Pen's party, Le Pen and her party, because they don't want the rights to come in. But the more they are doing this, the more people are moving, and I mean the population, they are moving to Le Pen and her party. What am I saying? This and that, I don't have an issue with whether left or right, whatever, do your politics. But one of the core thing, one uniting thread across the right, and I'm from the United States to the UK, to Germany, to France, everywhere, one uniting thread, right, is their anti-immigration. They do not support immigration. So that era of something going wrong in your country, in Africa, and you just say, well, F you, maybe Botswana, or F you, maybe Sudan, or F you, maybe Algeria. I'm going to France, I'm going to Germany, I'm going to the United States, I'm going to the United Kingdom. That era is gradually coming to a close. It's gradually coming to a close. I saw a report this week that every second Africa in this past year, every second Africa, every second African has considered leaving his country in this year. Do you know what it means? One in two. Do you do you know what that means? One in two Africans has considered leaving his country or her country in this year. The world is changing. The world is changing. That idea of just saying, you know what, F you, and you just throw in the towel and you pack your bags and go to another country, that era is coming to a close. Let me give you an instance. See Canada. Trudeau in Canada, they've had this illegal immigration path where they want to get skilled workers coming to coming to Canada to get into their workforce, right? And as they're in their workforce, they can add to the growth of the Canadian economy. So they just only the only thing Trudeau, this administration is focused on is actually getting skilled workers. And there's a number they request for every year, hundreds of thousands. And this thing has been going well for I know a lot of Nigerians who have gone to Canada with this thing, and even India. I think it's Nigeria and India. Even Indians have gone. A lot of Africans have used this Canadian skilled immigration something to move to Canada, right? And they, like I said, they have a certain number in hundreds of thousands they get every year. But this year, what happened? Because of pressure that the right, which is another place, look at Canada is turning rights to this guy, Pierre Polivier, is turning rights to him. But I think that the same way the Democrats and the Republicans in the US are the same thing. The only difference is the MAGA faction, but the Democrats and the Republicans are the same thing. It's the same way I think that Trudeau and Polivier are the same. Their parties are the same. The same way, if you look in the UK, you find out that the conservatives and Labour is the same. So this populist movement now is what is making the difference. But anyway, because of the pressure of these anti-immigration people in Canada, Trudeau has reduced the number of skilled immigrants coming into Canada. He has just reduced it. So if one in two Africans are saying we are going to leave Africa to go somewhere in the West or maybe even Asia, because even Asia now we're going, a lot of us are going to Asia. If we are thinking we are going to keep doing this in 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, we'll be very mistaken. Listen, we'll be very mistaken. The most important thing now, when the heat comes in your country, you don't like the way things are going, you need to understand that nation building is a collective effort. It's a collective effort. So don't live in La La Land and say, oh, I'm leaving Nigeria because the Nigerian government are not even serious about improving Nigeria. No, no, because you need to realize that you have. I'm not talking to Americans that have been in the US for maybe centuries, right? I'm talking about these Africans, like first generation immigrants. You can go. Like I told you, a lot of people have gone. It's not a problem. All I am saying is, all I am saying is, the way politics and media is changing around the world, particularly in the West. that leisure, that luxury of you just something your country is going bad. Instead of you to sit down and think of how to fight to fix it, you just throw your hands in the air and say, I'm going to the United States. That era is coming to a close. Because normally we saying when these people are having their rhetoric, their immigration rhetoric, you may be saying, oh, they have a problem with illegal immigrants. These H-1B visas, they are not illegal immigrants. In fact, they are immigrants that the United States government and the companies that employ people have realized that they need to add money into the American economy. Yet Americans are saying, we don't want anybody illegal, close it. Things are changing. While I know with this, I'm guessing for like 80% sure that with this particular thing now, Musk is going to win. Musk faction is going to win because they have the money. They have the money. So it's the people with the resources and the funds that get to win things like this. But in the long run, I'm telling you that this is just one feat, like one punch in a very long battle. In the long run, they will win because they're going to, their argument is, oh, um, these people are coming in from India, from Africa, wherever, and that because they can be paid less, they are taking jobs away from Americans. So that is the argument. The argument is they are taking jobs away from Americans. So when Americans see that their life is not, Americans feel like their life is not going a certain way, the money they used to make, say 50 years ago, right? 50 years ago, they could make a lot of money. Maybe with even one income household, you could actually live well. Like many of them, their wives didn't work. They would just took care of the kids. The men went out, and with just that one income, you will buy a home, you get a car, you will live. No, so things they are complaining that things have really gotten bad, and they are blaming this legal skilled international workers coming to the United States and every other immigrant. So that's the issue they're having. But I'm saying that things like this are going to continue. So we in Africa, we should not have at the back of our mind that there's a second option outside of Africa. For now, maybe in the next 5 years, 10 years, no problem. But in the long run, you will wake up to the fact that no, there's no second option. There, when you're there, you're outside, you don't have mouth the way you would have mouth in your country. You will not. Another thing I want to mention on this topic is that when we look at the rest of the world, Africa is way behind. Africa is way behind on things. So if the rest of the world works one, we should not follow the same movement, the same pattern that they use. What do I mean by that? I want to use this Vivek's tweet that caused an uproar within American society, but of even within the let's say within the Republican sector of America. I want to use this to talk to us. Well, I don't have a strong opinion about what he's saying in context of the United States. Really, I don't have a strong opinion. But what he said, we can bring this thing into Africa, and we'll be right. You see that era of we just being lackadaisical about things, particularly in politics, of just allowing things happen and move. That era needs to stop. If the rest of the world works one, Africa we need to work 10 if we are going to meet up. Because it's one thing to tell Africans that stay in your country and don't think of leaving, right? Or don't think of going to another place, stay here and build here. It's one thing to tell them that. It's another thing for them to have an environment that encourages that. Do you get me? So this thing of well, we are just dragging our feet and waiting for someone to no, 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 we need to stop it. We need to stop it. Because the way the world works, the world is, like it or not, the world is cutthroat. Like it or not, in this world, might is right. And if you are weak, anybody will take you and play. I have said, okay, see what we are just talking about France using Nigeria, using Tinubu and Nigeria to do Niger. Do you get? Anybody can play you like like a drum. They can play you like a rookie because you're inconsequential. But if we want to bring Africa to a place of strength, and like I have always said on this show, we want to create an African pole in the multipolar world. If we're going to do that, we're not going to walk and behave like the rest of the world. We are going to work and behave like our lives depend on this place working because it does. Because it does. And that is one thing I really I take issues with when I listen to, permit my word, I listen to black podcasts. You know, I'm not really, okay, may not have noticed, but I don't really like to use the word black because I think black and Negro is the same thing. Negro is Greek for black. So if Negro is a racial slur, why is black not a racial slur? Do you get me? Negro and black is the same thing, it's just languages that's the difference. So I don't like using the word black, but let me just use it in this context. Whenever I listen to black podcasts, sometimes I wonder, do these people even understand the way the world is changing? I just told you now that one of the reasons Donald Trump won and he won popular votes is because the conservatives have a stronghold on alternative media. And if you check, what if you just start listening, let's say you start following geopolitics, one of the most prominent voices you would hear on the American side are conservative voices. You actually need to take extra effort to begin to find liberal voices. I found them too, but I mean, you take extra time beginning to find them. The Republicans have mastered this thing called alternative media. They've mastered it. We in Africa, we need to learn from them. Oh God. That's why reports have come out to show that more young men in college people, young people in the United States usually young people are usually liberal, but now young men are more conservative. It's just the young women that are still liberal, but the liberals have lost young men. Why? American conservatives have mastered, they've so successfully mastered media, alternative media. And one thing you will find out that is true for American conservative media is that they praise men. You know, they paint men like, I think men are very important in society, right? But so it's very normal for young men to be drawn to that. So we should learn. That's one of the reasons you see every time we talk, it still comes down to media. We in Africa, we also need to gather. That's why I'm starting this thing next time. We need to gather our media voices. But let me go back to this black podcast I was talking about. When you listen to many of these black podcasts in Africa, many of them, majority of them, the talk you're hearing is sex, 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 relationship, sex. Sometimes I'm like, do you people even know what's going on in the world? For the past 600 years, let's use 600 years. I see the way the world has transformed, right? We have Africans, those of African descent, have ended up with the short end of the stick every single time. Look at it. From the Arabs to the Europeans to the Americans, every freaking single time we have ended up with the short end of the stick. Now that we are seeing another world is changing and forming right in front of us, what our people are discussing is sex. Sex. Like, like, tell me the situation. Let's look at Africa now. And tell me the situation. Let's use Nigeria because Tinubu has been so ridiculous, or even Kenya. What is the situation here that wants you to be so relaxed? I want you to be so relaxed. I get it that sex is it's what's the word? Can really is a stress reliever, right? But this too much talk about sex, boyfriend, girlfriend, sugar daddy, this too much talk of these stupid, unimportant things is distracting. It's distracting. We need more voices in Africa on this continent who will discuss politics because everything rises and falls with politics. I used to be the person that I didn't care about politics. I said, "Oh, politics is a dirty thing. It's a dirty game. I'm not interested in it." And the more I stayed away, the more things happened. And as I began to look, I found out that whether it's the money you have or you don't have, your children's school fees you can pay or the children's school fees you cannot pay. The girlfriend, since it's sex you want to discuss, this girlfriend or the boyfriend you can take shopping and you can enjoy life together, or the one you cannot enjoy life together. The unnecessary death and accidents you experience in your countries. I saw one that if there was an accident in Nigeria and there was no emergency on the highway, all of those things boils down to politics. All of Christmas came, you do not have food to feed your family. It's Tinubu and his political decisions. Oh, why is there terrorism in this part of Niger? Niger's government just told you that Nigeria is supporting terrorists in your country. Oh, why is it that the way we used to go to farms before to farm our foods, we can't go to farm our foods again? Their bandits are disturbing us. They're telling you that some outsiders are popping up bandits in your country. It's all about politics. It's all about politics. So let us wake up from this illusion that we can just be discussing sex and relationship and sugar daddy and do you like which position do you like, all those stupid unnecessary conversations we can be having it while the world is changing. See, those ones who are discussing strategies on how to create a prominent and important place for United States in this new world that is taking shape now. If they are having that discussion, they are mobilizing their society in that direction. Go and look at China. China just unveiled the world's largest amphibian ship. Look at the society in China. Look at what their students are learning in their schools. Look at what they are producing. China is orienting its society in a certain direction. Look at Russia. Russia is orienting its society in a particular direction. Even look at Brazil. Brazil, even Argentina. These countries are being oriented in a certain direction. Those ones who are being proactive and are structuring their society to be competitive in this new world, they are going to win us again. All this long thing I'm saying, this is the bottom line. They're going to win us again. If the only African voice you hear in alternative media is sex, relationship, sugar daddy, position, big hits, all that nonsense talk. Nonsense, yes, I said it's nonsense talk. Nonsense. You do not have 247 power in many African countries. Is which sex position is important to you that you want to discuss? Many African countries are not sovereign. Terrorism and terrorism are scattering everywhere. It is your sugar daddy. If the man does not buy you a Birkin bag, you are not going to talk to him. Excuse me. If a girl is not doing this and this, excuse me. Is that what's important to you? Ah, don't be a pawn in somebody else's game. Don't be a pawn in somebody else's game. I mentioned this whole thing about Niger and Nigeria in the last section. And when it came out, I was really happy. It was something that a lot of Nigerians were discussing. Then after that, too, just as we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the discussion, someone just came from somewhere, one influencer like that, and started talking one unimportant thing. To me, I think it's not important in the context of what is really going on between Nigeria and Niger. Then another one came out, and that another very influential person is gay. They're now releasing some raunchy chats, and so it just distracted Nigerians. Nigerians were so engrossed in these things. I'm like, sure, sure. I understand that it's like many times, right? This whole discussing politics or focusing on politics can be exhausting in like Africa, mainly because you feel there's nothing you can do about it. So you wanting to keep talking and talking and talking and talking is not going to get anything changed. So I understand you rather just distract yourself with several other things than focus on politics. But I'm telling you, the same way you have been distracting yourself likely since you were born, you've been distracting yourself. Situation did not change; it only got worse. That is why I said, let us try something else, right? So let's learn from the United States. Even let us learn from the conservatives in the United States. See what they have done with media. We can replicate it. No, there's no law that stops us from replicating it. I'm not saying you that wants to talk about sex on your podcast. You're probably saying, Amanda, you cannot boss me what I'll discuss. No problem, right? But I'm saying, let us have more people that are discussing geopolitics in Africa than we have that are discussing unimportant matters. That's what I'm saying. So you now, next year, arrange yourself. We are going to launch this our African media movement. And once we launch it, you will pick your phone. You will pick your phone. The same way I've put my phone in front of me, and every week I come out and I discuss matters affecting African geopolitics. It's the same way you bring your own phone and you discuss African geopolitics. Or if you don't want to talk to a camera, you are going to do a podcast. Or if you don't feel like you know how to talk very well, you are going to write news stories, like handle a blog or a Telegram channel or something. There should be those of us who follow this channel. By next year, by January next year, by next year, there should be few of us. In fact, there should be none of us who is not involved in discussing African geopolitics? Nobody. Nobody. Let our voices become louder than those of them that are distracting us with sex, sugar daddy, sugar mommy, um, all these things that are not important. Let there be more of us than there are of them. That way we can make politics prominent place, front and center of in the everyday lives of many Africans. Now I want to round off this section by by discussing this push against immigration that we are seeing across the West. Yes, many times we've said the immigration is part of the America and the Western foreign policy of bombing everywhere and causing economic sabotage with the IMF and the rest of them. Yes. Well, I want to shed light on a certain angle that many people don't discuss. Americans are upset that these immigrants that are coming in are taking their jobs, right? The problem is not the immigrants. The immigrants too, and people don't just stand up to leave their country. They don't just stand up to leave their ancestral homeland, right? They're not running to America because hey, like it's the place they just want to go. No, people are leaving their countries because of something. Something is chasing them. So the problem that many times people have not looked at to discuss is this globalization. Globalization is a problem. Why? Because many people in the world did not benefit from globalization. United States benefited, but it wasn't every African. The Americans that benefited were the rich corporations, the big businesses, were the ones that benefited. Another country that benefited is China. And it was in the, when you hear Americans say that China stole American industries, they took American industries to China. I said, no, China did not steal America's industries. American businesses took their industries to China. That was what happened. The Chinese were on their own. They said, oh, you need to do free market capitalism. You need to open your market. So China said, okay, we'll start bit by bit to learn. Let's see how it goes. So the Americans said, okay. And the other American companies saw that maybe the $1,000 they will pay an American, they may give a Chinese $10. They packed, they packed all their companies and all their industries and they put it in China. And the Chinese played the game well. They did. Give credit where credit is due. China played the game well. And so China decided to spread that technology, the industries were taken there, to spread it across their country. The China we are seeing today is because some people thought in a certain direction of how to benefit China when China was entering this Trade Organization and all these other globalist institutions. But the rest of the world, we lost. Like we in Africa now, a normal thing you say is that let's let's use Niger since we're talking about Niger. The uranium in Niger should work to the benefit of the Nigerians. After all, God gave it to them. But the way the globalists decided to play the game was different. They said the uranium in Niger should be taken out of Niger, refined somewhere else, and sent somewhere else. Like those countries in across Africa that have crude oil, they will take your crude oil. They will take it and take it to Netherlands to refine it in Netherlands. Netherlands that does not have crude oil. Then they will sell you your crude oil. They tell you it's free market capitalism. It's free market. So at the end of the day, Africa was the biggest loser in this globalization thing. Africa was the biggest loser. Biggest loser. Because sometimes you think, how is it that things have gotten so bad? It's got so bad because this is the system. And that's one of the things this globalization just reinforced. It reinforced colonialism. This is the system of colonialism. This is it. India, before the British went there to cause the disaster they caused in India was always important when it came to global trade. India, you remember them for their textiles, their fabric, their textiles. You remember them for their spices, so many things. India was a huge trade route. Look at the gemstones, all these things they were taken from India, that India has, diamonds. But once the British came in and they said, well, we've come to town, we are the boss. How is it that India went from a global economic powerhouse to the poverty capital of the world until recently? The British and colonialism did it to India. They broke India's back. When they found out that into, I think maybe to even punish the Indians, they cut off the, is it the thumbs or the arms of many Indians that work in this textile thing. So they couldn't teach the trade to the next generation. They cut off their arms or their thumbs, something. All the gemstones, all the diamonds, go to the British. That's the British. Is it Queen Mary's crown? One of these crowns in the United Kingdom. One of these ones that the monarch wears. A stone, a diamond that was taken from there is gracing that crown. It's there. Many of these royalties across Europe. Look at, check how they got the diamonds they wear, or the emeralds, or the rubies. Many of these things they took in colonialism. Look at it. See in Africa, it's the same story. So the problem with even with Africa, one of it why I said we got the really the why you say the worst of the worst, the short end of the stick is that just this whole globalist institution, globalization was kicking in just as African countries were so-called gaining independence. So African countries didn't have enough room, right, to actually execute policies for themselves because they were already drawn in. They say, oh, you now, they'll tell you when you want to go and take loan for from the IMF. They tell you, oh, this loan you're taking, as you're taking, one of the conditions for taking this loan is that you're not going to have an automobile industry. You're just going to import your cars. Because you want the money you sign. And so many African countries were engaged in wars, war that was stopped by outsiders. If, if we take the time to look at many of the wars that we fought in Africa, just after before and up just little bit before when we started having political talk about political governance, self-governance, when we started having all that talk, if you look at many of those wars, they're nonsense. By the time you finished fighting the war, you were so poor, you were so broke, you went to the IMF to take money. The IMF trapped you. They trapped you. You cannot escape. So then you never had economic sovereignty. So the problem, I agree with this, many of these people, globalization is a problem, and which is why I am not mad that many countries now are facing inward. I'm not mad because the everyday Americans who had jobs that paid them so much and so well that one income household was in a household, one income was enough to run and not just run, to even live a good life, to have vacations and everything. But today, two incomes are not even enough. Globalization destroyed it. So many countries are facing. There's this guy. He's a political commentator. I don't agree with him in many things he says. Peter Zen. Yeah, his name is Peter Zen. I don't agree with him in many things he says, but this is one thing he said that I agree with. He said he wrote a book, Every Nation for Itself, or something like that. It's true. Right now, we're living in a world where nations are facing inward. You hear countries like China. China is limiting export of certain resources to America, which used to be a huge income for China. But China is saying, no, we're not going to do this. You look at Russia. Russia is saying, no, we're not going to export this. Countries are beginning to face inward. They're realizing that globalization has been a disaster. It impoverished many more people than it brought out of poverty. And if you look, if you know, they argue and they say, well, globalization has helped. Look, before the world economy was at so and so, but today it's in so and so. Yes, it's in so and so today, but in the hands of a few people. It's in the hands of just a handful of people. That's why I said it benefited people, but just a handful of people. Majority of the world's population did not benefit from globalization. So as Americans are getting angry at skilled immigrants or any immigrants at all, instead of taking the anger at these immigrants, the immigrants too are suffering the same thing you are suffering. The reason, one of the reasons why they're running out of the country is because of the thing that is even making you angry in your country. So you people have collective enemies, the same problem. Let me know what you think about this back and forth with um the HB1 visas in the United States, and also this whole thing of immigrants, immigration. Me, I'm saying that Africa, the way the world is changing, we need to just focus on Africa. And instead of you to say, I'm going to leave this country and never come back, think of how can you come in to build this country, to build your country and this continent. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family, your friends, everybody, so we can reach more people across the continent and across the world. I mentioned to you that we need to learn from the conservative section of United States how to leverage media to push our interests. And that's one of the things that we are launching in 2025. I want to launch it in January, where we have a lot of Africans come together to discuss politics so that our voices will be louder than those Africans that decide that the only thing they want to discuss is sex and sugar mommy and sugar daddy. So if you want to support the work that I'm doing on this channel and even this project that we want to launch in 2025, if you want to support, please use the link in the description, and it is also the link on the screen. Thank you so much for your support. I'm going to round off this show with what is going on in Mozambique. I mentioned earlier that in the last time I spoke about Mozambique was just after the elections and the protests had just kicked off. And in that episode, I said that I think what is going on in Mozambique is a regime change operation, that some people are trying to remove the current administration for whatever reason, I don't know, and to bring in a new administration. And the new administration they want to bring in, I said to my brothers and sisters in Mozambique that they shouldn't think that the new administration is going to be the change they are looking for. And that was what I said. Now things have escalated in Mozambique. So on Monday, the court in Mozambique ruled that yes, the Frelimo party won the election. So they are going to inaugurate the party's representative. Is it Daniel? I forgot. I think it's Daniel something. I'll find it. I'll put it on the screen. So it's going to be inaugurated next year. Now the opposition is so upset, and he said no, that he is going to have his own inauguration come January 17th. In the middle of this, protests broke out again. A lot of people have died, and the country is everything is crazy. But for a while it's subsided, but now everything is crazy. But the thing that I want to discuss quickly before, because this episode has taken quite a long time than I expected, the thing I want to now mention is that just as this whole thing was going on, so conveniently, 1,500 prisoners were released from, or they broke out from prison in Mozambique, in the capital. Some people are reporting 1,500. I've also seen some people report 6,000, but I want to use the conservative figure of 1,500. They broke out of prison, and police was able to arrest maybe like 150 of them, 130 of them, but most of them are on the streets. What is so weird is that as they were breaking out of prison, they so conveniently were able to get AK-47s to enter the streets in Mozambique. So what do I think? I think that the people who want to remove this Frelimo party, I'm not a supporter of the Frelimo party. Like many Mozambicans and like many post-colonial African political parties, many of them have so become ingrained in the system that they really don't bother to do anything for their respective countries. So I'm not really coming to say, oh, I'm a fan of the Frelimo party. I don't care. All I'm talking about is what I am seeing on ground. I think this is a regime change operation that is taking place in Mozambique. So these people who want to remove the Frelimo party, it seems to me that they are doubling down. Because now this is me speculating, I don't have evidence of this. But I think that this prison break in Mozambique is more of a situation of certain people releasing, just wanting to cause more chaos in Mozambique. Because these prisoners, hardened criminals was what the police reported. These hardened criminals were running, they escaped prison, and they so conveniently had access to where they could overpower the guards and collect several thousands of AK-47s. How, like, do you get why this is making me worry, or this is making me wonder? How do you so conveniently get AK-47s? You just know where they are. Okay, they said they overpowered the guards. Okay, overpowered the guards and collect. Most of them collected these guns to enter to cause terror in the streets of Mozambique. Some people are doubling down on destabilizing Mozambique, and this is just another card in that game. This is just another card in that game. So I want to say something quickly because this show has taken really long. I want to say something to the Frelimo party. Now you is not. I get that you may not want to back down and say, okay, opposition can come and be the leaders, because if you were going to do it, you would have done it since. But I want to make an appeal to this party to please find a way to bring in for the sake of your country, for the sake of your country, find a way to bringing the opposition into this administration. Find a way, especially the head of the opposition, find somewhere within the, the, the structure of government, this new government coming in now, to bring him in. Because the more he's outside, all these things you're seeing taking place in Mozambique is taking place because the people are not happy. A well-fed population will not just run into the streets for nothing. Do you get? They will not run into the streets for nothing because they have their lives going on. Many of them are at work. They are doing things. They are running their businesses. They are taking care of their children. Their children are going to school. So they know they have incentive to keep the stability in your country because instability will affect them. But when you can see this for several months, you can see this mass protest, this mass riots taking place in Mozambique, is because the people are dissatisfied. Yes, I know there's also the instance where protesters are imported into the country. Because definitely that's the way protests go. They just bring in protesters to act as a way to mobilize the people. So when people are seeing others are outside, they have the insight. They'll be like, people are really protesting. Why am I sitting down at home? So that is something that will push them into the streets. But we cannot deny that well-meaning Mozambicans, we cannot deny that well-meaning citizens of Mozambique are protesting. They are protesting because so far the government has not delivered. So for the sake of Mozambique, and so that we do not have a situation where the whole of Southern Africa is on fire, please bring in this opposition figure and some other people from the opposition parties into this government so everyone will feel like this government is working for them and their voices are heard. And once you get that done, do something about the country. If young people are not having jobs, now think, how can we bring in more jobs? How can we bring in more jobs? I've said this thing several times. The world is changing so fast. So the era of we in Africa just crossing our arms and allowing the world happen to us, that era is over. Please, that era is over. So bringing, after setting up this government, inclusive of the opposition, now get to work to help Mozambique so that something like this does not happen again. And if fire is burning anywhere in Africa, it affects the whole region. Anything going on in Mozambique is going to affect South Africa. It's going to affect Zambia. It's going to affect Zimbabwe. All these Southern African countries, it's going to affect them. So it's in our interest to maintain the peace and stability of Mozambique. And it starts with these leaders. Once you come in now that the government, the court has said yes, you're the boss. Yes, you have won. Just come in, bring in this new opposition party, bring them in, and execute something for the well-being of the people. If not, outsiders will keep having very very easy. We have it very easy to set up chaos in your country because chaos can only burn when the people are dissatisfied. So please let me know what you think about the situation in Mozambique in the comment section below. I told you I just wanted to keep it very, very brief and concise because I didn't expect to have spent this long talking in this. This is the longest episode I've ever done. So please let me know what you think about what's going on in Mozambique in the comment section below. And if you have any information, maybe you saw a news story somewhere or you saw a report, an article somewhere, let me know. Or maybe even a leaked video, let me know. Share it with me in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining me. And please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone around you so that we can reach more people across the continent and across the world. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing on this show, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link on the screen and it's also in the description. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of The Amanda Show, and do have an amazing New Year's celebrations. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.